Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and GameFound over the next week. And if you're new to the channel, we do this every week going over all the upcoming campaigns, so if you want to stay up to date, this is the place to be. But before I get started, I do like to go over some news and announcements I just found out about over the past week. I just got a couple things I want to go over, and the first one is that we do have the next campaign announced from Ivy Studio. This one's actually going to be launching in about 10 days, and this one is Moonrollers. So if you were a fan of the Moonrakers game, I think this is definitely one that you'll want to check out. This one is going to be playing very differently than that game, but I think they are trying to capture some of the same elements because this one is going to be push your luck, except it's going to be more focused on dice rolling and dice mitigation. And the use of the hazard symbols are also present in this game as well, but I think they will be working a little bit differently here. But as always, I will be going into more details during the week of this game's launch. So if you're interested to know more, I will be actually covering this one in next week's episode. So if you don't want to miss that, you can always subscribe down below. And of course, you can click that bell icon if you do want to get notified. But there is one other thing that I noticed when I was trying to get caught up with my giveaways last week, and that's that we never actually drew a winner for the FlickFleet giveaway that we did a few weeks back. And that might sound silly to just completely blank out on a giveaway, but if you're new to this channel, we actually do giveaways every single week, sometimes multiple giveaways, well, almost always multiple giveaways in a video. And I think during the time of this giveaway, we're doing like 5 to 7 giveaways in every single video. I usually run these at the end of the episode, but since I did miss out on this one, let's just go ahead and draw the winner for FlickFleet now. And to enter this giveaway, all you had to do was leave a comment on that previous episode, and then I use this comment picker to draw a name from the comment section. But then we do also have all these extra names down here that are bonus entries for my Patreon subscribers. And if you do appreciate all the work that I put into these episodes, I really do appreciate any support that you can show, and you can find a link to my Patreon in the description below. But let's just go ahead and draw those comments and draw the winner for FlickFleet. And the winner is Edward Bretzloff, and this is one of our Patreon subscribers, so congratulations, Edward. All you gotta do is email me at adam@shelfclub.com and we'll get that sorted out. But if I don't hear from you, I will reach out to you on Patreon. As always, I do like to give a quick shout out to Alex over at Cove because him and I do work together keeping track of all these upcoming games so that I can give you these videos every single week. But then Alex puts out a video at the start of each month going over the heavy hitters for that month and letting you know of all the games that we know about so far. So if you do like these style of videos, I think you'll definitely want to check out those ones as well. But Alex also provides a ton of other content going into deep dives and reviews and playthroughs, and also just giving you general commentary on the industry. He puts out multiple videos in a day sometimes, so there is a lot of content there, but he does excellent work and you'll definitely want to check him out and subscribe if you haven't already. But Alex isn't the only one that I'm working with these days, and I do want to give another shout out to Mike over at Zilla Blitz because he's going to be putting out a video every single month letting you know of the upcoming Wargames. I am sharing my list of games with him so that he can find any Wargames that I'm aware of, and I still will be covering them in my videos, but as a general rule, I don't normally go into as much detail with the war games. They are a bit of a different genre than your typical board game, as they're more focused on historical simulations. And there is also other crowdfunding platforms that I don't even look at that do offer up these styles of games, and Mike is very aware of those sources as well. So he's going to be compiling all that information from myself and his other sources into his monthly videos. So if you are interested in historical war games, you'll definitely want to check out his channel, and I will have it linked in the description below. And one very last thing before we get started here is that I do want to mention that I have locked in my flight and my hotel for the Level Up retreat, which is going to be running from February 2nd to the 4th. And this one's hosted in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And if you are interested in going, the flights are very affordable right now, and I'm flying from Canada, which is usually a bit more expensive. But this is actually an event that is hosted by Alex from Board Game Co. And this event is much more focused on just hanging out and playing games and meeting people and having fun. So if you're interested in that, I would love to see you there. And I will have a link to this webpage in the description below if you want to check it out or potentially buy yourself some tickets. And that's it for an intro. And we do got quite a few exciting games launching this week, so let's check them out. And the first campaign we have launches on November 20th, and this one's called Firefighters on Duty. And this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play. And this is a cooperative game where players are going to be managing their own fire department. The main board represents an entire city where fire is going to be spreading and growing each and every round, and players are going to be using their actions to try and manage this and keep things under control. Each game will have some different objectives that players are trying to achieve before the end of the game if they want to win, and you're going to be determining those objectives by drawing one of the objective cards. Each of these cards will also specify a certain amount of scenario points, and if players allow certain bad things to happen in the game, you can actually lose these points, and if you lose the amount as specified on that card, then all the players do lose the game. You'll also lose the game if any civilians or firefighters die, so you also don't want that to happen. But this is a game where players are going to be feeling the pressure because you're actually going to be fighting against time. The way that players are going to be performing their actions each and every round is that each player is going to have 2 action dice, and then they're going to be rolling those dice and performing the action associated with the icons that they roll. There's no limit to the number of actions that players can perform on the round, and players can re-roll their dice as many times as they want to try and get the actions that they need. But at the start of each round, you're going to be starting a 2-minute timer, and players are only allowed to perform their actions within that time limit. Each player can also only move and use the fire truck of their player color, which means that you are going to be a little bit limited with your options, but also means that you're going to want to talk to the other players, work with them, and try and figure out which player is going to be taking care of which fires, or if you're going to be working together to do so, depending on the actions that you're rolling and the position of your vehicles out on the board. The different actions that players will be able to perform with their dice are to move their fire trucks, their water trucks, or the ambulance around to new locations out on the board. Of course, your fire truck is going to be used for putting out fires, and it can carry a certain amount of water on its own, but the water truck acts as a mobile unit in order to get more water out to your trucks, but you do have to load that at the fire station. There's also the ambulance that players will be using to take rescued civilians off the board, but players will also be able to move individual firefighters, which can also move civilians to safer locations, and players can also use one of the actions to increase the supply of water dice at any of their stations. And of course, there is an action to try and extinguish a fire, but in order to do that, you need to have a hose and a firefighter on that space, and then you need to have a fire truck adjacent to that space. You're then going to be rolling an amount of water dice from your supply, and then trying to get values that are above the water value on that space. Rolling successes will help you get rid of those fire tokens, but of course there are some special action cards players can acquire as well, and there is an action to use these cards, and you'll be wanting to take advantage of these to try and avoid any very bad situations out on the board, because once that 2 minutes are up, that's when all the bad stuff is going to happen. First thing that players are going to be checking for is any spaces that have both a person and a fire token, and any spaces that meet that requirement are then going to cause that person to get injured. Doesn't matter if this is a civilian or a firefighter, you're going to be putting an injured person token there and taking away the one that was there previously. But if there is a fire token in a space that already has an injured person, then that person's going to become a casualty, and like I said, any casualties cause you to lose the game, so you really don't want that to happen. But after you've checked all that, and if you haven't lost the game, you're then going to be checking for any of the spaces that have 3 fire tokens in them. For each one of those spaces, you're going to be drawing an event card, which is going to be adding more difficulty to the game, usually specifically in that location. This can cause all sorts of negative things to happen that the players are going to have to deal with. But if there are 4 fire tokens within a space, then that space is completely destroyed. And if you lose too many spaces out on the board, that is one way that you can lose the game. There's also a few different types of hazard tokens that can appear on the board throughout the game. And of course, if there's any fire on those spaces at this point in the game, that's going to have some negative effects as well, usually causing that fire to spread in various ways. But as if you didn't have enough to worry about, there is another type of token that can appear out on the board, and these are called distress call tokens. And these are actually going to have a number on them, and they're going to be counting down the number of rounds that players have to try and respond to that distress call. And for each of these tokens, you're going to be drawing a distress call card, and depending on if you're early, on time, or late, you're going to have various different consequences when you get your fire truck to that location. After that, each location with a fire token is going to get an additional fire token added to it, and then the next round begins, and the game continues like this until the players have either lost the game or completed a preset number of rounds, and then you're going to be checking for your win condition. If the players make it that far and have also accomplished their win condition, then they win the game, and if you are interested in this one, you can check it out. I'll have links to the campaign in the description below. And also launching on the 20th, we have a campaign launching on GameFound that's going to be offering you a bunch of different wooden accessories for your dice storage or dice rolling for your various games. And this is going to be offering you a few different styles of dice towers, as well as storage solutions for your dice that are going to have wooden lids and a leather interior. And the campaign also does give you flexibility in choosing the type of wood you want and the style of leather. It's also going to be different dice trays to roll your dice, and I'm sure there'll be a bunch more added to the campaign once it's started as well. But if you are interested in this one, I will have it linked in the description below, and of course you can follow along to get notified. And launching on November 21st, we have Food Chain Magnate, the special edition, and this plays 2 to 6 players and takes about 120 to 240 minutes to play. And this one is a competitive game where players are each going to be playing as a CEO of their own up-and-coming fast food chain. Players are going to be hiring different roles in order to operate their business and market their restaurants to the public. But this is a game that also did launch back in 2015, has been quickly making its way up the rankings because it's now the number 38th game of all time according to BoardGameGeek, and it's also ranked number 31 when it comes to strategy, because this is a game that doesn't have a whole lot of randomness in it whatsoever. So if you are interested in strategy games, this is definitely one to check out. And it is also my own personal pick of the week. And I do have a few reasons for that, and I'll get into more of those in a second here. But this one looks like it has a solid design, and I really do love the unique twist that this one brings to the deck building aspect of the game. And it's also a game that just stood the test of time. It's been getting some great reviews, obviously with its ranking on BoardGameGeek reflecting that. And also this one just has a fantastic theme that's a lot of fun, and I am a huge fan of. And it's a nice bonus that this one is getting the deluxeified treatment, and this one is being deluxeified by Lucky Duck Games that has done a fantastic job in the past, and I think this is a game that did honestly need it, because the original game was quite expensive and it wasn't exactly the prettiest game to look at. And no, I don't think this one's going to be any less expensive than that original game, but you are going to be getting a lot more for your money here because it has brand new artwork and graphic design, and they're also including the addition of miniatures to really make the board pop out on the table. And this one's going to have much bigger tiles and even a storage solution to keep everything organized, both when you have it stored away but then also when you're playing the game. And it's also going to feature double layered components and deluxeified paper money. And this one kind of did make me laugh because I'm normally not a fan of paper money in board games, but I think in this game it really does suit the theme, and it is kind of fun to be counting money like a rich executive. And then the fact that they did deluxeify it is going to improve a lot of the issues that I do have with paper money, because my main concerns is that paper money just damages really easily and it doesn't age very well and starts to curl and just doesn't feel nice. But because they're making this out of a specific tear resistant type of material, I don't think you're going to be having that issue with this game. But aside from the new aesthetics and upgrades to the game, this is going to be featuring the exact same rule set of the original game, and it will also include the catch-up mechanic expansion as well. This is also going to be a single print run, and they're not going to retail with this version, so if you do want the deluxeified version of this game, this is probably going to be your only opportunity. But if you're not familiar with Food Chain Magnate, this is a game that plays over a series of rounds, but at the start of the game, you're going to be setting up the board with a bunch of randomized tiles, and then players are going to be taking turns placing out their starting restaurants. Once you do that, you're going to be playing through the rounds, with the first action being to choose your staff that you want to play for that round. And like I said, this one is a deck building game, but what makes this one so cool and different from a lot of other deck building games out there is that you don't actually have a discard pile or a draw pile that you're going to be drawing your cards from. Instead, you just get to pick the cards that you want to use each and every round. The limiting factor here is that you can only play as many cards as you can manage, and you only start with one card at the start of the game, which is your CEO card. This one allows you to hire a person, but then it also allows you to manage 3 different people below you. The cool thing about that is that you can actually hire other managers that also allow you to manage different characters below them, and this is how you'll be building up your engine and adding more and more employees to your hierarchy of your company. Players are all going to be choosing the cards that they want to play that round in secret and then simultaneously revealing them. The reason for that is because any empty spaces within your hierarchy are going to be bumping you up in turn order. So if you really want to be first player in the round, you're going to be trying to leave as many spots open, basically sacrificing playing one of your cards there. But once all the players have chosen and revealed their cards, you're then going to be determining the player order, and then players are going to be activating their cards in that order. The different cards can have a bunch of different effects, but the main ones are that they will allow you to add new cards into your supply, allow you to train some of your existing cards into a more powerful version of that card, gather the food and drinks you need from various distribution points out on the main board, or even run marketing campaigns in order to create billboards or radio towers, or even fly planes up above to increase the demand of the houses within range. Some actions can also allow you to place new houses or even add gardens to existing houses, and adding a garden to a house makes them of a higher class, which basically means that they spend twice as much when they buy anything from your restaurants. Of course, this is called food chain magnate, so it's not going to be much of a food chain if you only have one restaurant, so there are also actions that allow you to move or build more restaurants out on the board. Houses with any demand are going to be resolved during the round, but houses are only going to buy from the restaurants that can fully meet their demand for food and drinks. So if you don't have enough food and drinks at your restaurant, then the house is not going to purchase from your restaurant. If you do have enough, but there's other players that also have enough at their restaurants as well, then the house is going to favor the restaurant that offers the lower prices. This is why it might sometimes be strategic to lower your prices using some of the actions of your cards in order to undercut your competition and generate some revenue instead of none. This, of course, is really important when you're running a business because money is the lifeblood of a company, and at the end of the round, you do have to pay your employees. Some of your employees could be generating you money, while others do cost you money, and any that you're not able to pay at the end of the round, you're going to have to fire until you can meet those payment requirements. The game continues like this over a series of rounds, but this is also a game that has a very interesting endgame trigger, because the way that this works is at the start of the game, you're going to have a certain amount of cash in the supply, and then once that completely drains, you're going to be refreshing it twice. And then once that drains the final time, that is going to be triggering the end of the game. So it's not as tied to the number of rounds like you see in most other board games. And players will also be racing to complete different milestones throughout the game, which will grant some different ongoing or instant bonuses. And players will be taking advantage of this and just trying to accumulate as much money as possible, because it's the player with the most money at the end of the game that wins. And if you are interested in this one, you can check it out. I'll have links in the description below. Also launching on the 21st, we have Horizon Forbidden West, Seeds of the Rebellion, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 1 to 2 hours to play. And this one is a standalone expansion to the previous game, Horizon Zero Dawn, but this one's going to be making quite a few changes and quite some significant improvements on the system as well. The way that this game works is that this one is going to be fully cooperative, whereas the previous one was semi-cooperative, and then this one is also going to be including quite a bit more narrative than the original game. But if you're not familiar with the franchise, this is based on the video game with the same name. And the whole premise here is that players are characters in the distant future in a post-apocalyptic world where the world is now overrun by these giant mechs. These different machines are all going to be modeled after different animals and deadly dinosaurs, and players are going to be trying to survive in this world while also building up their own tribe and fighting against the other tribes and factions that may not be as peaceful. Like I said, this does take place in the future, but a lot of the technology and knowledge has been lost over the rise and fall of society, so players are going to be making use of both primitive and advanced weaponry that they're able to find or build as they play the game. And like I said, this edition of the game is going to be providing a lot more narrative than its predecessor, and it's going to be offering you a bunch of branching paths and decisions to make along the way, as well as side quests that players can choose to explore. The cool thing about the narrative here is that Steamforged Games did work very closely with the original creators of the video game to make sure that the story that they're providing fits within the expectations of that world and follows a lot of those existing plot points while still bringing something new to the table. And a cool thing here is that not only is that narrative going to be provided through the scenario booklet, but the different maps and areas that players are going to be exploring or encountering different challenges are also going to be provided through various booklets. And you'll actually be able to combine these together in order to create unique maps. This is going to make the game a lot easier to get to the table, because in order to set up that main board, all you're going to have to do is flip over to the appropriate pages rather than having to worry about finding all these different tiles and boards in order to piece it together. Players are going to be using their actions to move around and interact with different areas of the board, but of course you will be running into rival factions and those giant mechanical beasts. And even though those beasts aren't really animals, they still do act and behave like them, which means that stealth is a huge factor in this game, because you can actually sneak up on those creatures in order to hunt them for their parts, or even possibly sneak right by them. They're going to be a lot more predictable when they're not aware of your presence, but as soon as you do anything to make them aggressive, they're going to be changing up their behavior according to their specific activation card, with a bunch of different possibilities with the way that they'll interact and attack the players. Players will be using a combination of their cards, gear, and items in order to fight back, and of course once you defeat those giant mechs, you'll be able to harvest them for different parts that you can use for new weapons or upgrades to your existing gear. The game continues like this as they play through the various scenarios, trying to complete those individual goals in the overarching campaign, and if you do want to learn more about this one or check it out, I will have it linked in the description below. Also launching on November 21st, we have Philharmonix, and this plays 1 to 4 players. It takes about 60 to 150 minutes to play. And this one is a competitive game where players are going to be using worker placement in order to build up their own orchestra and then send that orchestra to different places throughout the galaxy in order to build up prestige and win the game. This is a game that I thought was launching a few months ago, so I did already cover this one, and I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. Players are going to be playing over 5 rounds, where each turn you're going to be spending action points in order to perform one action. The interesting thing here is that each of the actions amount of points needed to perform it are going to be varying from round to round. So there's going to be a changing market there. Not only this, but for each player that already performed the action, it's going to also increase that cost. So there are some varying costs here that players are going to have to manage as they decide which actions are going to grant them with the best overall outcome. And there's a whole bunch of different actions for players to choose from in order to send their orchestra to different planets, do things like recruit and train musicians and conductors, create different symphonies and perform those symphonies, and also gain supporters and fans, and expand your musical knowledge. Players will be gaining victory points throughout the game depending on the musicians they're able to acquire and the shows that they're able to perform, but you're mainly going to be gaining those victory points from performing those shows and by completing different objectives. The player with the most victory points at the end of 5 rounds wins the game, and if you want to know more, I do have links in the description below. Also launching on November 21st, we have Monarchs of Camelot, and this plays 2 to 4 players and takes about 1 to 2 hours to play. And this is a competitive game where players are going to be playing as different characters from Arthurian legend. Each of these characters are going to be coming with their own starting stats and special abilities, as well as their own unique deck, because this one is a tableau builder. But the way that a game's set up is that players are going to be choosing a scenario at the beginning of the game. There's a whole bunch of scenarios to choose from, and each of them can have different paths and varying outcomes depending on the decisions of the players. So you'll still have a lot of variety even if you do play the same scenario twice. But players are going to be playing through that story depending on the decisions that they make, earning victory points for their influence on the story, the actions that they're able to play, and also the goals that they're able to complete. The first player to reach 10 victory points wins the game, and players will be playing this over a series of rounds where you're going to be drawing up to your hand limit at each and every round that you can modify throughout the game. But each turn you're going to be deciding to play cards either on the left hand side of your character sheet or the right hand side of your sheet. Whenever one you choose, you're going to be performing the actions in order that that side of the card provides. This might allow you to gain all sorts of different resources, modify your stats in different ways, or even perform various actions and then use those resources to perform any other actions on any of the other cards that you played previously. Timing when you play certain cards can also have a big effect because some of the actions might have a different outcome depending on your stats at that time. So you might want to try to get your stats in a certain configuration before you play that card, depending on the action that you want. The game continues like this over a series of rounds with players drawing up to their hand limit and playing more cards into their tableau, earning them those actions and resources that they can then use to activate other cards in their tableau. But once a player plays at least 4 cards on one side or the other of their character card, that's going to determine your trajectory for the rest of the game, because you're going to be upgrading your character with the card that matches the image on the side that you added that 4th card to, but then you can only play cards to that side for the rest of the game. So although this does make you more powerful, it will be limiting your options on a single card. But the game continues like this as players influence that story and try to complete their objectives, and the first player to get 10 victory points wins the game. And if you're interested to learn more, I will have links to the campaign in the description below. Also launching on the 21st, we have Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea, the Deluxified Edition. And this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 120 to 180 minutes to play. Something to note about this one is that it is designed by Scott Almes, who you might be more familiar with when it comes to the Tiny Epic series. And this one is definitely epic, but it is definitely not tiny. This one is a competitive area control game where players are each going to control their own faction of units, which each do share the same set of actions, but they're going to have very different upgrades that you can make as you play throughout the game. But you're essentially going to be using them to occupy different areas out on the board, build different buildings, and gather resources in order to build more buildings and recruit more units and perform even more actions. And a really cool aspect of this game is the way that those actions work, because players are going to be taking turns performing their actions, and all the different options are available at the top of your board. These are actually broken out into 2 different categories. There's your capital actions, and then there are your command actions. In order to perform one of these, you're just going to be putting your action tokens onto the actions that you want to perform. But the neat thing here is that if you perform a capital action on the left, any other player at the table can also perform that action if they want to sacrifice one of their units by putting their unit on that action space. If you instead choose to perform a command action, this actually allows you to perform another command action if you want to sacrifice one of your units by assigning them to a separate action. Capital actions allow you to do things like pay resources in order to recruit new units to your team, and there's a bunch of different types of units that you can gain even within a single faction, but they're going to also allow you to build different buildings out on the main board, and these buildings can have different effects like unlocking different abilities for your various units, opening up new options on your board, or even gaining you victory points for the end of the game. There's also the research action, which allows you to take advantage of different spell cards that you'll be acquiring throughout the game. You can use those to perform some special abilities and effects that are specific to those cards. And these cards are normally one-time use, but you can also use this action to allow you to use spell cards multiple times. But all these capital actions do require you to pay some amount of resources in order to perform them, except for the tax action. And there's a few different types of resources offered in the game, and you're going to want certain resources depending on what you're trying to do. But if you perform the tax action, you can choose one of the resources on the tax track. Then you're going to be gaining that amount of the resource as indicated on that track, but then the whole track is going to be advancing 1 space, moving anything at the top down to the bottom. This means that you will want to time when you perform this tax action to try and get the most of a particular resource as you can. Of course, that's not the only way to get resources in this game, because you do have your command actions, and you'll be able to use those actions in order to deploy units out on the board, move them around the board, and also take advantage of different locations in order to gain the resources that those locations offer. Like I said, there are a whole bunch of different types of units in this game, and some are better at generating resources, while others might be better at the area control. Speaking of which, you can also send your units out into enemy territory in order to fight your enemy's units. And the way that combat works in this game is that the amount of your units in that location is going to be adding to their strength, and then you're also going to be adding a tactics card, and each player is going to have a certain amount of tactics cards in their supply, with each of them having a different ability and possibly a cost in order to play, and players will be trying to use the one that they think will give them the best advantage over their opponent. This is a game that actually has a few ways that can trigger the end of the game. You can either trigger it through exploration, expansion, exploitation, or extermination. So I guess I should have also mentioned that this is a 4X game. To end the game through exploration, there's going to be a bunch of different exploration tokens scattered throughout the board that are placed there at the beginning of the game, and players are going to be moving around collecting these and gaining different rewards depending on what is depicted on that token. But Once all of these are collected, that's going to be one way to trigger the end of the game. But to trigger the end through expansion, all that needs to be done is a single player needs to deploy all of their certain types of units, and then that's going to trigger the end of the game. Or they can go the exploitation route, and in order to do that, you just have to build all of your towers and get them into play. And then there's the extermination, which of course means defeating one of your opponent's capitals. Once any of those occur, the end of the game is triggered, and the player with the most victory points wins the game. This is another fantastic game that has stood the test of time, and it's always nice to see that extra production and effort put into games that have solid designs and absolutely deserve it. And if all that does sound interesting to you, there is a ton more to explore on this campaign, because there's a ton of expansions and additional content, including flying continents, additional maps and playmats that you can use as well, and different worlds to explore, and different factions and cards, and pretty much everything that you can imagine for a game, including a companion app that's not required to play the game, but it does offer some guided play and rules references, and just makes you getting into the game a little bit easier. Definitely one worth checking out if you are interested in these style of games, but like I said, this is a game that is already released, so if you are able to try it before you buy it, that's always something that I do recommend, but I think you will really like this one. And if you are interested in it at all, I do recommend following along so you can get this extra miniature added to your pledge completely for free, and you can find a link to the campaign in the description below. And launching on November 22nd, we have Guns of the Old West, and this plays 2 to 8 players. It takes about 45 to 90 minutes to play. And this one is a semi-cooperative Western sandbox-style game where players can play the game either in individual scenarios or as an overarching campaign. The game's going to be throwing players into all sorts of high-intensity action moments, like train heists, bank robberies, and even gunfights, and players will be building up their own reputation as an infamous outlaw or as a reliable deputy of the law. There's also going to be a couple expansions that allow players to play as natives or military factions as well, but no matter how you play, there's always going to be a group objective and then your individual goals. And players can all win the game together by completing that grander objective. But of course, this is the Wild West and anything goes, and some of the players might rather just look after number one. This is a turn-based game where players are going to be using actions to move and interact with different areas of the board, and players will be able to attack NPCs as well as the other players. And combat in this game is resolved by rolling attack and defense dice, but of course that can be further augmented by your different stats and gear and the weapons that you choose to use. The game also offers 3 different types of cards called health, action, and time effect cards. You'll be able to use these in conjunction with some of the actions that you have available to you in order to augment those actions and either make them more powerful or have some additional effects. The game continues like this over a series of rounds with players performing their actions on their turn, trying to complete that overarching goal, but then also potentially trying to complete their own personal goals. And the personal goals don't always make you betray the other players, but a lot of them might, so it's going to be up to the players' decisions and the options available to them to decide if they want to work together as a team or if they want to betray everyone else and try to win alone. But don't forget that you might not be the only player choosing that route, and you don't always want your intentions to be known. But if you are interested in this one, you can check it out. I'll have links to the campaign in the description below, and you can also follow along to get a free gift added to your pledge. And launch on November 23rd, we have Nemesis Retaliation, and this plays probably at least 4 players and then takes about 90 to 180 minutes to play. And this one is also our Discord pick of the week. And it's no surprise because Nemesis is a game that has been out in the past, and this is actually the 3rd iteration on the game. This one also makes some substantial changes and improvements to that core system. So rather than explaining how the original games play, I'll just try to let you know how this specific game plays. Although there is still a lot of overlap since they do essentially share that same DNA. But if you're not familiar with any of these games in the franchise, this is essentially a cooperative game where players are going to be working together to fight back against an alien threat. Each of the games does play a little bit different from each other, but in this version of the game, players are all going to be playing as different marine specialists, each with their own unique set of stats and deck of cards, but players are all going to be working together, taking the fight to the alien's nest. Since players are hardened marines backed by the support and resources that the military has to offer, you're going to be entering this game with some of the best gear and weaponry that you have ever seen across any of these Nemesis games, but that doesn't mean that the game's going to be any easier because, like I said, you are entering the aliens' territory and all the stakes are going to be much higher. Something that's neat about the way that the characters work in this game that's a little bit different from the predecessors is that you do get this really neat character board. You have your health outlined at the top of the board, and your health is actually broken into 3 different sections. There's healthy, injured, and then heavily injured, and then of course after that you are dead. But the cool thing here is that once your health enters into one of these more critical sections, you're going to be adding a injury card into the section before it. This is going to be granting you some sort of negative effect that you're going to have to deal with until you're able to heal up and get rid of that negative effect. The board also has a few different areas where you can slot in different tactical items like extra ammo, grenades, or oxygen, and players do have a wheel on the right hand side of the board where they're going to be tracking the current oxygen that they have available in their tanks, and of course you'll be using that up anytime that you're in an area that doesn't have life support. Of course, players can use their various actions and the computers available to them in the various rooms in order to activate the life support in various areas in order to help make survival a little bit easier. Another neat aspect of these Marines that wasn't available in the previous editions of this game is that each of the Marines will also have a certain number of stars associated with them, and you can see that underneath their name, and that essentially means their rank amongst the group. The cool thing about this is that if you have more stars than another player, that means that you can issue them orders. This is a really nice thing because it allows you to tell them to perform an additional action out of their turn because you ordered them to. And there's a bunch of different actions that players can perform, but most of them will be movement or attack actions or interacting or searching various tiles that you are currently occupying. Each scenario provides a mission goal that players are going to be working together to try and complete, but there's also going to be some personal goals that players can complete along the way as well in order to get some special bonuses or gear cards added into their supply. At the start of a scenario, all the players are going to be starting on the same tile, and then as players move and explore the areas around them, you're going to be adding more tiles into play. The way this works is that each time you take that explore action, you're going to be drawing a card from the explore deck, and it's going to be telling you what type of tiles and corridors you're going to be adding onto that tile. This can have different effects depending on the region of the board that you're currently in, and it might involve you drawing specific tiles from a specific stack. But a neat thing about these tiles is that each of the corridor tiles are going to be associated with a particular number. Anytime that a player makes a movement, you're always going to be rolling the noise die afterwards, and whatever value you roll with that die, you're going to be adding noise tokens to all the associated corridors that match that value. If there's already a noise token in that corridor, then instead you're going to be adding an enemy, and you're going to be randomly drawing an enemy token from the bag, and this bag's going to be starting with a predetermined set of enemies depending on the scenario, but more and more difficult ones can be added throughout the scenario. But you're essentially going to be drawing that token. It's going to tell you what types of aliens are going to spawn, and some of these tokens do allow for spawning multiple enemies at once. A couple things to note about this is that there is also a token for the alien queen, and she can get eventually added to that draw bag, and if she does get drawn out, she spawns on the board just like any other alien. But the way that she's different is that at the start of the game, you're going to be taking the alien queen cards and then randomly discarding 3 of them, making her deck just a little bit different from game to game. And then anytime that she gets spawned, you're going to be drawing the next card from that stack, and then that card is going to dictate her behavior and what needs to be done to defeat that instance of her. And then once you have spawned and defeated her enough times that you've gone through that entire stack, then and only then is she fully defeated in that particular game. One thing to note is that there is one side of the noise die that doesn't add noise tokens to the board, and if you do roll that icon, it can cause you to just spawn an alien instantly in the space that you are currently located. This means that the aliens are going to be ambushing you, but it can be prevented if you have previously secured that room, because there is an action to secure a room. When you do that, you're going to be putting a secure token on it, and that is going to prevent one ambush, but then that token is going to be discarded. So if it happened again in that same room, then you would be ambushed unless you had secured it again. But But you are in an alien hive here, and players will end up having to fight the aliens in one way or another. And if you are in the same room as an alien, then you pretty much just have the shoot action that you can perform to target a single alien in that room. But if you are able to push those aliens out or position yourself so that you're adjacent to those aliens, you can actually burst fire your weapon, allowing you to attack multiple enemies at once, and also toss grenades with the same effect. And a neat aspect of this game is that the more damage you inflict to an enemy, the easier it is to kill them, because you're going to be trying to roll a certain value in order to defeat them, but the value you need to roll is a value below the current damage, which is a really simple and elegant way to do the combat, and I don't think I've seen that in any other board game. There's also a bunch of other interesting actions that players could perform on their turn, like using a computer console on their tile in order to control one of their rovers out on the board. There's only ever one rover in a given mission, but there's a whole bunch of different types of rovers that could be, each with their own individual benefits and bonuses that can help the players in various ways. But like I said, players are going to be doing all these actions to try and complete that mission goal, but that is not enough to win the game, because players also need to escape the hive. And there's two different ways that you can do this. You can either enter hibernation, or instead you can be extracted. And there is a ship that is going to be flying to come pick you up, so this is creating a bit of a timer for players to win the game. But if that ship arrives too early and you haven't completed your mission goal, then that is no longer an option. And also there could be some anti-aircraft guns that players need to disable before it gets there. There are some ways that you can slow down or speed up the arrival of the ship, but if that's no longer an option, there is also the hibernation option, and in order to be able to do that one, you need to protect it for the game, because if any of that hibernation chamber gets breached and destroyed, then it's not exactly going to be a safe option. But this campaign hasn't even started yet, and there is a ton of content on their campaign page, so I know there's a lot more to dig into with this one, and if you are interested in it, you can go ahead and check out their campaign page now. But of course, you can also follow along to get notified once it launches, and that is a crazy amount of people following along with this campaign already. So if you just want to check it out to see what sort of numbers this hits, that's probably worth it as well, but you can find a link to the campaign in the description below. That is everything I have for you this week, but don't leave yet, because we still got a few awesome giveaways to announce, and these are the easiest giveaways to enter ever. You don't have to like or subscribe or do anything like that. All you got to do is leave a comment down below, and that'll get you entered into these giveaways. And the first one we have is for a deluxe pledge of the game Kelp, which you can check out on Kickstarter now. And this game is doing amazing with over $800,000 raised so far. And if you're not familiar with this game, this is a 1v1 head-to-head strategy game where one player is going to be playing as the Octopus, trying to eat up all the different types of food, with each type giving some sort of special ability, making the Octopus stronger as the game goes on. But also the Octopus is going to be using cards and hidden movement to perform their actions, and any time that it needs to eat something, it's going to be revealing its location. The shark's of course trying to eat that Octopus, so it wants to know where the Octopus is, and it's going to be playing more of a game of dice worker placement and bag building, and it's going to be using the different colored dice to perform its various actions. Both the design and production on this one looks amazing, so if you haven't checked it out yet, I definitely do recommend checking out some of the gameplay videos to see if this is one that you might be interested in. But what's even better than backing a game is winning it, and all you gotta do to enter this giveaway is leave a comment down below with the hashtag Kelp, and you can leave any comment that you like, but if you're looking for something in particular, maybe you could let us know what your favorite seafood is. I absolutely love sushi, but I feel like that's a bit of a cheat code here because it just encompasses so many different types of food and fish. But if I had to pick something, I'd probably go with lobster tail, although I do love oysters quite a bit, just with the horseradish and the hot sauce. It's just such a great app, and I wish I could afford it. And the next giveaway is going to be for a pledge for Chaos Cove, and if you're not familiar with this game, this is a worker placement game where each player is going to have 4 different workers at the start of the game. And you're going to be using those workers to build buildings out on the board and take various actions and even fight with the other players. But a really neat aspect of this game is that each of those workers is going to come with a particular special ability, and whenever you use that worker, you'll be able to perform their special ability as well as the location ability. But what's neat about this is that every single round, players are going to be swapping their workers with the player next to them so that every player gets a chance to use every worker. But this means that you're going to have different possibilities and actions for every round in this game, since you're going to have a whole different set of workers. And this giveaway is going to be for the Rum Party tier. And to enter this giveaway, all you got to do is leave a comment down below with the hashtag chaos. And if you're looking for something in particular to say, maybe you could let us know what your favorite thing to mix rum with is. I mean, it's traditionally mixed in drinks, but I think the absolute best place for rum is in a rum cake. That is seriously a top tier dessert. And the next giveaway we have is for a pledge for Demoniac, the Possessive card game. And this one is a competitive game where players are all working against each other, trying to be the first to fully possess their victim. But then there is also a single exorcist that's controlled by the game that's going to be getting in the way of all the players. In order to win this game, players do have to first defeat that exorcist, but then they also need to fully possess their victim by using actions to place cards around their victim, matching up certain icons in order to get the combination of icons they need in order to overcome the stats of that victim. Some of the cards have abilities, and of course, the more that you possess your victim, the more powerful you get, allowing you to roll even more dice when it comes to attacking the exorcist. This giveaway is going to be for a deluxe edition of the game, and to enter this giveaway, all you got to do is leave a comment down below with the hashtag demon, and you can say anything that you want, but maybe you could let us know what your favorite horror movie is. I mean, Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness do hold a very special place in my heart, but they're not really scary. But a movie that I don't even know if it's considered a horror, but scared the crap out of me when I was a kid was Independence Day. That was a great movie. And the last giveaway we have for today is going to be for the GameToppers campaign. And if you haven't checked this one out yet, it's offering a bunch of different playmats and GameTopper components, as well as the GameToppers themselves. And if you're interested in what these mats look like, well, I actually have one on my table right now, and I absolutely love it. Looks fantastic, and it is of very high quality, and I do recommend them. Like I said, there's a whole bunch of different accessories and items offered in this campaign, but this giveaway is going to be for one of their tote bags. And I actually really love these tote bags. I've used a whole bunch of different gaming bags throughout my gaming career, but these are definitely the ones I prefer because they fold up and store away really nicely, and they're very affordable, and they don't take up a ton of space, and they get the job done. So these are the ones that I do recommend. And if you are a gamer, these are really nice to have so that you're not carrying all your board games around in cardboard boxes. And to enter this giveaway, all you got to do is leave a comment down below with the hashtag bag. You can leave any comment that you like, but if you're looking for something in particular, maybe you could let us know how you currently carry your board games around. For myself, I actually don't currently own a tote bag, so I use cardboard boxes. I'm not proud of it. Good luck in the giveaways, but now let's go ahead and draw the winners for last week's giveaways. And we got quite a few to draw here. We have an all-in pledge for Perseverance Castaway Chronicles, as well as a pledge for Valka, Saw, Misty Waters, and the 13th Street Crew. And we also did have another tote bag that I announced last week, and even a Cyber Coinsides coin. These last three were run on the Discord, which you can find in the description below, so make sure to check that out to see if your name got drawn if you did enter into those giveaways. But for the rest of these, we're going to be drawing the names using this comment picker. And just like I said at the start of this video, all these extra names down here are bonus entries for my Patreon subscribers. If you do like this sort of content and you're able to help support my efforts here and make this just a little bit more sustainable for me, I really do appreciate it. And I do have a link to my Patreon in the description below. It makes a massive difference for me, and it also comes with a few extra perks, including some bonus entries into these giveaways, which is never a bad thing. But let's go ahead and draw for Perseverance Castaway Chronicles first. So let's go ahead and draw those comments and draw a winner. And the lucky winner of the all-in pledge is Anne-Marie Stracuzzi. Congratulations, Anne-Marie. I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a pretty wicked all-in pledge here. Now let's go ahead and draw for the next one, and we're going to draw for a pledge for Valka. So let's draw those comments and draw a winner. And the winner for Valka is Earl Jordan from the comment section. So congratulations, Earl. Just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out for you. Now let's go ahead and draw for the pledge for Saw. So let's update this and update that and draw a winner. And the winner for a pledge for Saw is Jeff Norman, who is one of our Patreon subscribers. So congratulations, Jeff. I'll reach out to you and let you know that you just won yourself a pretty awesome pledge. And last but not least, let's draw the winner for Misty Waters. So let's go ahead and update this. And update that. And draw a winner. And the winner for Misty Waters is Zach Studer, who is a viewer from the comment section. So congratulations, Zach. Just email me at adam@shelfclutter.com and we'll get that pledge all sorted out. And that's it for this week. I hope the video has been helpful, and I just want to thank anyone that left a comment for last week's video. I'm really excited to go through all those comments and check out all the metal bands that all of you suggested. I'm not too much of a metal head, but I do love music, so I'm still super eager to see all the suggestions that you left. And also the big game for me this week is definitely Food Chain Magnate, and I guess that's obvious since I made it my pick of the week, but I don't always intend to back my picks every week. Sometimes I'm just picking the one that I think offers something unique, or they did a really great job on the design, or sometimes even just a game that I think a lot of you might like. But for Food Chain Magnate, it's definitely one that I am intending to back, but I'm also a little hesitant because I've never actually played the game. So if you have played the game, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts down below. And one thing that does scare me about this one is that it does have a 4.2 out of 5 for weight on BoardGameGeek, which usually indicates a lot of rules overhead, difficulty teaching the game to other people, and often a lengthy setup. This game doesn't look that complicated to me, and I don't know if I'm missing something here, but I'd love to hear from any of you that have actually played this game, and if you think it is as heavy as it says here on BoardGameGeek, and if not, what other game would you compare it to in terms of its complexity or rules overhead? I'm really interested in this one, but if it's going to be a massive chore to get to the table, it's probably not something I want to back. So if you do have any insights into this, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section down below. And I thank you in advance for that, and I hope it does help out some other viewers as well. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full. Oh.